Welcome to the RD2BE Podcast. Each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the dietetics profession. Our aim is to dismantle the notion that there is a traditional career path. I'm Carl Barnes, the registered dietitian behind the scenes of RD2BE.
And I am Jenna Warnock, the RD2BE host. Our RD guests share their stories, career paths, and advice to help students like us succeed in the profession. Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna, and this week we're super excited to have an amazingly accomplished dietitian that's in the realm of workplace wellness, community nutrition, and she has a great background in owning a business, teaching other dietitians, and just a woman of many hats. And so this week we're sitting down with Miss Denice Ferko-Adams. She's a corporate wellness dietitian, consultant, trainer, and speaker, and she's also the founder of Wellness Press. She's currently retired, but still very involved in the profession and also just making the most of her personal life. And she's still active as a volunteer and does consulting, but she also enjoys traveling. She recently got a husky and she also does skiing. So she's definitely making the most of her time. But Denice, thank you so much for sitting down to just share your journey and your expertise.
Oh, thank you, Jenna. Thank you for the wonderful introduction as well.
Oh, no, of course. I mean, and you'll definitely talk about your experience and things like that definitely back up to why you are a woman of many hats. But so first, what we always like to ask people is, where did your passion for dietetics begin, and just where did your dietetics journey start?
Well, I was one of those students who at the University of Pittsburgh for 2 years changed my major 3 times. And the career counselor suggested dietetics. And I believe she did so because University of Pittsburgh didn't offer an undergrad program at that time. So I left and I went to Indiana, University of Pennsylvania, and in 2 years crammed all the food and nutrition courses in, because at that time, and even today, people don't want to spend more time in school than they need to. And that was the start of my career, and I loved it. I loved it. I had all the science. I had a very strong science background. I was looking at pre-pharmacy and other medical careers, but it really gave me a strength then to transfer that to food and nutrition.
Oh yeah, definitely. And who doesn't love food? Like, that's just, it's a great path to go towards. And so then whenever it comes to your career, because we talked about it before, whenever you send over your resume, you've just done so many things and a lot of great pieces of advice or things that RD2Bs can take from. And so can you just give us a journey through your career, and first, where did you do your internship, and then where that kind of propelled you off?
Sure. I was in the last year of traineeships, which even when I served on the national board, I really thought they should bring the academy should bring them back, because at that time I spent half the year in food service management and half the year in clinical. And I did it at Norristown State Hospital, which was a very large psychiatric hospital. I believe it was at least 1,200 bed hospital. They had a team of at least 6 dietitians. So you had a great leaders to study under as an intern. And if you're going to instruct patients that have disabilities of any type, you can't hand them a diet sheet. So I really credit Norristown with making me be a visual thinker and communicate differently. And shortly after my internship, I did work for Norristown for a year or two, but then I went right to the top, chief clinical dietitian at a 300-bed hospital. And that's where I found out that people had really unrealistic expectations of what dietitians should do, because I was overwhelmed. And I had them hire additional people, but it still was insufficient. But I think in the hospital was hearing from patients saying, why are you the first person telling me this, that their lifestyle was linked to heart disease, to cancer potentially, or to manage their cancer, or to their diabetes? And so it just gave me that passion of, if your doctor isn't telling you this, or your nurse isn't telling you this, and I need to go out and tell the healthy people how to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy how just in such a short time span, you just jumped to chief clinical dietitian and just got thrown. It definitely has its pros and cons. With the overwhelming and stuff, but that kind of hit you right in the face with, these are what patients aren't being told, and they have to go, they have to wait until they see a dietitian, which, I mean, to be frank, not a lot of people get that opportunity to see a dietitian, to be told exactly what you said, where nutrition, lifestyle habits are what leads to those chronic diseases. And so after you had like that clinical experience and you really got that rush of, wow, these patients are kind of lacking about what nutrition is, what dietitians do, and what role they play, where did you, and that does definitely sets the like groundwork for that corporate wellness and that kind of community nutrition
Mhm.
aspect. So how did you segue from that really robust clinical experience into your own consulting practice and things like that?
So one thing that happened, now Norristown's based outside of Philadelphia. And then at the end of working clinically, I moved to the Allentown, Pennsylvania area, so Lehigh Valley. And I was married. I had a baby within a year, which wasn't planned, but she changed my life too. And so I became good at juggling. And I sent out in this new community, I thought, cardiologist. This area had one of the highest rates of heart disease, and they would be my ally. I sent out 100 letters and I sat by my old rotary phone, like we used to have back in the day, and waiting for them to call me. And the phone, I think I got one phone call, got one referral from that. And it made me realize the cardiologists don't even know what I can do for them. So I then started reaching out to the local news stations, the local radio stations. They would have a Health with Your Doctor program, something like that, on a local TV. And I called them and said, "Oh, you're talking about osteoporosis this week. Wouldn't you like to have a dietitian come on?" And they would invite me on. And I did it, I did it so often that when I would call and say, "Oh, you're talking about diabetes this week. Don't you want a dietitian to come on?" They would say, "Sure, Denice." So they didn't even ask me, who I was, they recognized my voice by this point. And it just helped my name to get out there in the community. And I didn't realize the importance of that at the time. But I ran classes at the local Y on vegetarian cooking. I ran classes at the community college. But really, my big break came when I went to a conference, and it was back in Philly at University of Penn. And it was not just for dietitians, it was for fitness directors. So, I encourage students, go to conferences outside of dietetics. I happened to be sitting next to or nearby a fitness director for a very large Fortune 500 company. Actually, I think they're like Fortune 200, so they were even larger. And that's based on income. So you should know, if you want to get into corporate lingo, corporate lingo for companies. And Kelly Brownell was speaking about weight loss contest. And at the time, I stood up and time for questions. And I said, I really don't believe in this concept. I think you're just promoting yo-yo dieters. And he very nicely thanked me for my comments, and I sat back down. So the fitness director, whose name was also Kelly, came up to me and said, "Denice, I want you to," or she calls me the next couple of days, "I want you to run a weight loss contest for Air Products." And I essentially said, being so brave at that young age, "Well, Kelly, didn't you hear what I said? I don't believe in that." And she said, she basically said, "Don't be stupid. Come talk to me. I have a budget." She didn't use those words, but that's to this day my interpretation. So what I did is I had an 8-week program, and I went in and said, "Look, we're going to get a nice group of 30 people. I'm going to target the content. I want to retain rights to everything that we do here." So that was a very important precedence, because when that fitness center director launched the program, we had 499 people sign up. I had to immediately renegotiate my contract. I had to go, they didn't have a room big enough for 500 people to sit and listen to me. So I went in 3 days a week doing back-to-back programs. I used to be hoarse, but I loved it, because in the back of my mind, how long would it take you as a dietitian to reach 500 people? It was just amazing. And then that also led to, by week 3 or 4, all the people are pointing to the cafeteria and saying, "Here's the problem." And they had a beautiful cafeteria. It was very nice. So I went in and worked with, they hired me. I had another contract to work with the cafeteria manager on healthier food. And essentially what we did was feature the food on very large easels, like chicken stirred fried rice is the healthy choice today. And I would provide them with the recipes and everything. what happened was all the other employees who weren't in the program would eat the healthy choice. They would run out of food, but it really, it really did a lot. And then at the end of the program, that local television station that I was on, I called them and said, hey, I'm doing something really neat here. Why don't you come and interview the people? I didn't have them focus on me. I had them focus on the fitness center director and the cafeteria manager, and maybe they pulled a couple participants. And something important I forgot, even though they wanted a weight loss contest, I built in parameters to make it safe. We didn't give points if they lost more than 2 pounds a week. So we did all those kind of great things. And at the end of that television spot, which maybe lasted a minute or two, my phone did not stop ringing. I had all kind of corporations calling me saying, hey, can you come here and do this program? And I essentially was saying, can you write me a check? I can come here and do that. So
That is, yeah. And it's just like, there's so many things to just take from that, where it's like, all it took was one conference, sitting next to that one person and asking that one question. And then it just cascades into all of those things. And like this is just kind of a side question, where it's like, you talk about all of this while also having a daughter and like, being in this new family. Like, how did you handle the overwhelmingness of everything? Was it just kind of like going with the flow, or like did you have to like set in some specific guidelines for yourself while kind of venturing out to all these things?
So yes, you're going to delegate, you're going to find the help. So that's really important. At different stages, I had sitters that came to my home, and sometimes they'd bring me a sandwich in my office. Other times I took my children to their places or to daycare. So that's really important for the child aspect. Your husband or spouse needs to be very supportive as well. And it is a lot of juggling. So you have to be comfortable with that. You can't, I think a lot of dietitians have a very strong perfectionist gene in them. And I did too. But you need to tone that back, because, pretty good is a lot better than average. You don't need to be perfect. But it is important to delegate. I had a brother-in-law who did IT work. So he helped create quickly, before the program became implemented, a management system to give each of the teams points. So we could do that electronically. And certainly the fitness staff was a great asset to have them do heights, weights, blood pressures on everybody and help keep the motivation. So like, don't be afraid to work with other professionals like that. They're an asset to you. You can work together and collaborate.
Yeah, and I think it's great how the first thing you emphasized was, don't do it all on your own. Like, being overwhelmed starts with just having all the pressure on you, where if you, take advantage of that network, take advantage of like, your brother-in-law being in IT, you're able to focus on the stuff that you're really passionate about. And then all those like little things that are still important, but, shouldn't bog you down, are still able to be accomplished without weighing you down so much. And whenever it comes to Wellness Press and that your business starting, so where in this timeline of, getting your first client and things like that, where did that kind of fold into all of these wonderful corporate wellness and like community outreach things that you were doing?
Well, and probably when I did that program, I wasn't under Wellness Press yet. As I expanded, two of my longtime clients, and there's a term of evergreen, that you have a renewing contract with them, were Bethlehem Steel and Lehigh University. And, you think, oh, those are large companies. Don't they have people inside to handle this? No, they don't. And they don't have somebody with your knowledge. A lot of companies rely on human resource managers who don't take nutrition and health courses, so they're looking for people like you. But no, that as I developed it, and as dietitians then expressed interest in purchasing my programs to use, I was also very active in the Nutrition Entrepreneurs Group. And I first served as secretary and then became chair. And you're working with, as in the leadership role, a team of 20 dietitians that have their own businesses. So there's a tremendous exchange of knowledge and support that you gain. And being on the East Coast, one of my mentors was Candy Matson, she was the owner of CompuCal, which was a tech company that she developed for dietitians. And she was in Seattle. There were many nights at 11 o'clock at night, I'm calling her because I know she's awake and getting ideas and support. So, that leadership, volunteer leadership works two ways. You're volunteering your time, but there's a lot that you can gain from your peers. But what I did with Air Products was really kind of once and done between the weight loss contest and the cafeteria program. But I took that to Bethlehem Steel and to Lehigh University, and I started pitching year-round wellness services. So that was really my niche of seeing that over the summer, we could run a 10-week fitness program. And during the fall, we can offer a holiday eating campaign. And maybe monthly, you'd like to have cooking demonstrations. So you really try to plant seeds for other services. You get documentations from evaluations, so there's a whole lot that dietitians can offer to a company, especially if you're sensitive to what they need.
Yeah, no, definitely. And whenever it came to you reaching out to these other corporations, these other organizations, the universities, things like that, to pitch these programs, how did you manage the growth? Because I'm sure that like once you pitch and keep on building your network of clients and getting more and more of these responsibilities and programs and content, just all these things circulating, yes, the delegation that you mentioned, but whenever it came to like growing with your clients, how did you build that network and how did you kind of maintain it so that, again, you wouldn't fall into that overwhelming trap?
I think you're always staying on top of what's current, what are the trends? How does it leak to nutrition? I would talk to people and they say, oh, you ran that program there last year. And I would say to them, yes, but think about it. If you attended someone's session last year and what do you remember about them? Did you remember what they were wearing? Did you remember something funny they said? Did you really take home a message and change, like, oh, I'm going to try to drink more water, or, oh, I'm going to walk after a meal? What was it you took? So in my mind, people take what they need at that point in time. But, there's opportunities for you to go back and do a very similar program again and engage them again. And that's really my focus went from being a weight loss to calling my program Health First. And so I wasn't pushing, weight loss did occur, but the people that came in were going to learn about how it's linked to chronic disease. Now, you can't market a program on chronic. Well, you can't. You can say, come and hear about diabetes. Who's going to walk in that door? Nobody wants other people to know they have diabetes. But if you say health, it's general. Now you can tackle those harder topics, under that umbrella. And that's what I was good at.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm kind of glad that you mentioned, kind of instead of focusing specifically on like diabetes or hypertension, you just did the overarching health. And so, for example, with like those cooking demos or those like group presentations or those 10-week long programs, and like what you said, your first client, you had 500 people enrolled. So whenever it came to addressing those large groups of people, how did you, like, for example, with the cooking demos, how did you address those large groups of employees and was still like effective with reaching everyone?
So I adapted the large group cooking demonstrations for the company. So at Bethlehem Steel, we held it in the cafeteria. I worked with the food service director and their chefs, and they did my 3-course meals for everyone to eat in a buffet style. So as you came in, you went through the buffet, and then they set up my demo table. So I could show people, how do you do this at home? And it was just fabulous because I could network and walk around and talk with all the people. So look at all the support I got there. I got the support of the cafeteria behind me. Well, now at Lehigh University, what I did want to mention is kind of under marketing. I think one of the best marketing tools is to take somebody out to lunch. And what might cost you $30, but you're not in their office. They're not being interrupted. They're not on the phone with somebody. And you have their utmost attention. So I took the 2 HR managers that I worked with at Lehigh University to lunch, and I pitched doing cooking demos for them. And they said, oh, where do you want to do it? And I said, up in Iacocca Tower. Iacocca Tower is named after Lee Iacocca. It sits on top of a mountain, South Mountain in Pennsylvania, has this beautiful view. It's circular and it holds 75 people. And I said, your employees never get to go there. And, we'll do it once a month and they'll be theme based. And that's what we did. And it was so special. We had a theme, we had music, they were served by waitresses. So we adapted that to what fit for the company. And dietitians are good at this. You know what will work or what not work. You have very good assessment skills. So
Yeah, and I think it's good that you mentioned we are good at what we do. We are the professionals in nutrition and in diet, in dietetics, and in kind of implementing these programs that will be effective long term, especially regarding health. And it's also, again, like with what you mentioned, taking them out to lunch to kind of get that one-on-one and to really be effective with kind of pitching your idea and things like that. I think that's a really great piece of practical advice that aspiring RDs can take down the road. And so, in just that whole creative aspect of doing the cooking demos in that beautiful environment and having the different themes, making it really engaging. And so whenever it comes to all of these great consulting, corporate wellness, and just all these clients that you had, and in building your business, Wellness Press, were there specific just kind of reflections on those experiences, like certain challenges, lessons learned, things that RD2Bs can apply to themselves as well, just kind of a reflection on all of your experiences?
well, I think one of the things I always say to dietitians, who are new to this, if you think about, you're trained to do a nutritional assessment. So, well, now you can assess a work site. You can ask them. They have healthcare claims. Where are they spending their money? What's the average age of the employees? Does their healthcare coverage cover their spouses and children too? Are they reaching them in any way? There's just so many common sense things that follow that. You go from assessing a person and their lifestyle to a work site, and what is the wellness level in that work site. There are some work sites I could walk in and it would just be so cold. You felt it, so you come into that work site and now are something fun and interesting, and you're giving them a really different atmosphere that you want to grow and develop. But so once you do an assessment, then you're going to have some type of plan for them. So your initial meetings, when you meet with a company, you're assessing them. It will take maybe more than one meeting and more information, but you don't need all the answers right away. Then you're going to put together a plan that you think may work, and that's your proposal. But proposals can change. You can adapt them. You can partner with other people. And then you're going to do some type of intervention. Maybe they decided they need help with coordinating their health fairs. That's a job nobody likes. What I found is, for the health fair, I already knew all those people because I was volunteering and working in my community. So it was so easy to pick up the phone and have them come to the health fair. That was a no-brainer for me, and I loved it. And then, you want to make sure that you do evaluate. Anything you do, you want an evaluation piece. And if you have trouble getting evaluations, then you have to give them something, give them a water bottle, give them something to give them an appetizer, give them some food, a free lunch. You want that data to be able to go back to upper management and show them. The other thing I did, especially with Bethlehem Steel, was work closely with their HR manager and help lead the wellness committee. And so at times you do training for them. But I actually ran their programs at other locations as well. So I hired dietitians in Baltimore when it was for Burns Harbor, Burns Harbor's in Illinois. Sparrows Point is in Baltimore. So we ran different programming. And I hired local dietitians because you need that. You can't have somebody come from the outside. They need to know what's the local supermarkets and, where can they shop. So that was, very important. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. And kind of getting to know, and with that, kind of getting to know your client, your population, and knowing how best to effectively address their needs. And I'm glad that you mentioned, you hired people in the space that they were addressing, because you don't want someone from California virtually telling a group of employees out in Baltimore, like, oh, just shop at X, Y, and Z store. And then they're like, what? I've never heard, like the closest
Right.
one is 50 miles away, like that type of thing.
Mhm.
And so it's good to have those things in mind. And so for students that are maybe interested in kind of pursuing corporate wellness, or like, wanting to, because I feel like for aspiring RDs, we want to reach and touch as many lives as possible, and corporate wellness can be a very effective way of just reaching a large group of people and affecting their lives. And so for the students that are maybe interested in pursuing this niche of dietetics, where do you think they could start, or just like things that they could start doing so that they could maybe grow into this space?
So you really start having a wellness vision. So you look around, are there things on campus that you can get involved with? Is there a campus run or walk? I'm sure there is. Just get involved and interact with the people that are leading those programmings, because that's going to help you. It's going to help you with the vocabulary that they use. It's different than how dietitians speak. Same thing with the cafeteria. What is the cafeteria doing? I have a passion for cooking, and so I really enjoyed doing the cooking demonstrations. But a lot of dietitians are fearful of cooking, or they don't enjoy cooking. So that may not be, the best place for you to volunteer. But definitely, I would even think your health clinics, are there opportunities that you can do mini presentations for, a mini demonstration, making a healthful smoothie? Students love tasting something like that. Brings me back to, when you're at the National Academies meetings, look at what those food providers are giving. So you can easily tap some of those same food companies and ask them for donations, because you want to do some type of easy demo for students. That's it. So I have never been afraid to ask, so I'm always ready for a no, because back in the day, people didn't have a wellness budget. I didn't go through the insurers. I wanted it to be paid directly. So in my eyes, I was cutting out the middleman. And, they can put me on their payroll, and I will work with them to improve the health of their employees. But when I would start out and say, let's run this holiday program and it's November, and they would look at me and say, well, we don't have that in the budget. And I would say, that's fine. When are you setting your budget? I'll come back. So if the budget was set for January 1, I would say, or another option is that I'll bill you January 2nd. I'll deliver the service to you, and, I'll pay you, you pay me in January. So, you just always have to think out of the box of getting something for you to keep it moving forward. And I still joke, when I would get a yes, sometimes I would be like flabbergasted that it didn't take as much effort as I thought. I got the yes, and I guess I have to go do the work now, but I loved getting a no. How many no's, Jenna, do you think you might expect when you
No,
pitch wellness services?
yeah, because I mean, you said you like sent letters to 500, cardiologists, and you got one.
Well, 100, just 100.
Oh, just 100. Sorry, I was mixing up the
But still,
500 with the, yeah.
still only one. But
Yeah.
when you pitch something, or when you reach out to a company cold, how many times do you think you hear a no?
Probably statistically like 99% of the time. That's my guess.
All right, but how many? Okay, then maybe I didn't phrase it right. How many no's? When would you give up? How many no's would it take for you to stop?
Like me personally,
Yeah.
I would say like if it was about the same thing that I was pitching, I would probably give up like on the 10th. No.
Oh, you are good. You're good. On average, 10 to 15 no's.
Okay.
10
So I
to
barely make the cutoff.
So I can't tell you how many yeah, you're doing well. I say you have a high persistence level, because a
Mhm.
lot of people won't give it 10 times, and 10 times doesn't mean you're calling them, constantly. It might be that I met with you last week, and you mentioned your son plays soccer, and here I am, and I have an article on sports for 10-year-olds, for soccer players. I'm going to email that to you. So you find other ways to get in there and just be in their mindset, because people hire someone they know, someone they like, someone they trust to deliver. And that's how you need to come across to them all the time, and this, by the way, is my selling voice. I don't normally talk like this.
Well,
So,
yeah, and I feel like especially with dietetics students, or like with what you mentioned, they're in like this perfectionist box where it's like,
mhm.
oh, I should only reach out if I know it's going to be a yes, or like I should only reach out if I'm pretty sure that like I'll get a positive response. But I think having your mindset of you expect to know, like it sounds like on paper it sounds pessimistic, but really no, you're being realistic, and having that mindset kind of frees you up to take more opportunities because you have the mindset of, oh, the worst that they'll say is no, and they'll probably say no, but that's okay because then it's just kind of the mindset of, well, let me just see what happens. And then we just see all the clients that you've had, all the impact that you've made. And that's just with that, not just, but a component is that mindset of not being afraid of a no and actually being pleasantly surprised when you get a yes. And it's those types of things that really help grow your career, and not being afraid to think outside the box and be creative and make the most of our credential or of our background in nutrition, because there's a lot that we can do. And one of the things that you did out, like as well as with Wellness Press, is being the director for obesity prevention education at Villanova. And you mentioned that in your resume, and I was like, that's awesome, because it was, the first was it a nursing college that
Yes,
you had?
yes.
Yes,
College
yeah,
of
and
Nursing within
mhm,
Villanova,
yeah,
which
and
was very well known. Yep.
yeah, and it was crazy because you were like the first director and being a dietitian that kind of integrated nutrition into the nursing college and curriculum. And I just would love to just have you dive into just everything about that position, what you did, things like that, because I just think it's great.
Well, at the time when I saw this post for their position, I just finished coordinating a weight management conference for dietitians um, for the weight management dietetic practice group, and that conference was in Atlanta. So because of that, I missed the posting. So I get back from, a week of being away, and I missed this posting. So I reach out to them, try to put in my application, and I can't get in. Okay. First no, right? And I read the job description and thought, this is just great. I really want to do this. I really want this position, or I at least want to go them to interview me so they can maybe hire me to do all my other programs there. Right. I have a lot of things in my portfolio. So I start looking online, and I find no less than 5 email addresses, including the dean of the College of Nursing. And I start sending off my messages. I just heard about this. I was away. I really would like to be considered. I know you're closed. And they eventually then, and then I make phone calls too. I make phone calls to as many people as I can. So that's probably my 10 contacts, 5 emails, 5 phone calls. I mean, what do you have to lose, right? They can say no to you. So I get in for the interview. It's a team interview. They open it up. I'm the last one to be interviewed. And you have to do a presentation. So again, these presentation skills, students can be working on that right now. What works, what doesn't work, do some improv. Groups love humor, So I do my presentation, and it was maybe at least 5 people in the room. And they told me I wouldn't really get to ask many questions, but they cracked the door just a little bit. I was allowed to ask a question. And so my question for them was, what do you expect the person that takes this role to accomplish in 1 year? And that's a really good question for your students. When you're being interviewed, think about turning the tables. You should always have some good questions for them. And that's a great one, because what the first thing they said was, would like to have a weight management conference, right? And so I'm sitting there with my portfolio. I don't have it in front of me right now to show you, but I held up I opened up my portfolio and I said, oh, you mean like this? Because it was just what I did in Atlanta for the dietetic professionals. And I could tell at that moment that they were going to make me an offer. I mean, I just knew, I had the job. And so so they did have one dietitian on staff that taught, and she was the one who insisted that the position be a dietitian. So I give a lot of credit to Marcia Costello for helping to get dietitians in at Villanova. But one of the things we did, we focused on communication skills for health professionals around weight management, and that's what our first conference was about. And it was called Weight Management, What You Say Matters. And that today is so popular, but 10 plus years ago it wasn't. And it was just amazing to be doing this in an interdisciplinary way and bringing in other professionals. And and then I did other things like monthly webinars that were open to all types of professionals. And Villanova did a great job of getting credits for all the professionals handling that aspect. Again, if I was on my own, I couldn't have done that, right? And what was another highlight of? There was another highlight I wanted to mention for you. Villanova has a state-of-the-art simulation lab for their nursing students. It's something I wish the dietetic profession did more of, because it's hard to get that clinical experience. But what I helped them do was create a scenario for a bariatric patient who was at home and having difficulty. And they actually brought in a student actress. We put a fat suit on her under her clothes, and she sat in a room, and they brought in like maybe a half dozen nursing students who were, I believe that most of them were in their senior year, and they had to interview her. They took turns interviewing her while I'm watching them, and their instructors are watching them from a remote location. So you're getting to observe how they do. And at least in one of the groups, when somebody walked in and saw an obese young person, the nursing student gasped. And that just, again, the value of doing this. And the actress said, I'm wearing a fat suit, but it was just, that's what you want them learning is, you need to be prepared for real life and real situations. So I just really loved working with the nurses though. So don't be afraid to work with nurses or doctors.
No, yeah. And I feel like, and this is an area of dietetics that I'm very passionate about, where it's like we've been struggling a lot to get our profession voiced in other allied health professions with nurses, doctors, things like that, because again, we really can't do much unless we collaborate. Like you wouldn't have been able to hold those webinars to really have that reach if you didn't collaborate with Villanova, and if they weren't able to have those incentives for other doctors and nurses to kind of participate in the programs and things that you offered. And so whenever it came to being able to work in that interdisciplinary team, was everyone open to the opportunity, and was it like very synergistic, and did you see a lot of benefit with that collaboration?
Yes, I believe so. No, I think everybody was very receptive. I know the nurses felt I brought a lot of entrepreneurial mindset, which, it is a mindset. It's something I developed early in my career, and just, I think that's important. And so they felt too that many nurses are not as entrepreneurial in their thinking. They're great at helping people. So there was a lot to share.
Yeah, and with that entrepreneurial mindset, that's like where you think outside the box, where you have creative solutions, and where you're really able to like make a big impact by thinking of all the different ways. And so whenever it comes to positions like the one that you held at Villanova, do you see that area or like those types of opportunities in dietetics expanding in the future, or having a lot of those different types of opportunities arising for aspiring RDs?
So I look at very much the academic setting, and I wonder why maybe there could be more done within the academic setting for those instructors to be getting more involved in wellness at the academic level. And, I know everybody's busy and, but that seems, since Villanova was able to do this and they do not have a dietetics program, but I would think there should be more collaboration between nursing and dietetic programs at colleges that offer both of those. But I really think it's going to take students and professionals knocking on the doors. There's still, when somebody, I would often say when somebody would tell me no, in my brain, I take that to mean they don't know, K-N-O-W. And that's why they said no to me. It was nothing personal. They still liked me, but they didn't know why this was such a great benefit to them. So it was just, roll up your sleeves and figure out another way to get in that door.
No, yeah. And for those people who don't know, like, do you have any advice for kind of making us known and for I'm sure perseverance and continuing to knock on those doors, but because I feel like that's a big reason why it's like a never-ending vicious cycle where it's like we don't feel like we can expand our role because of not the backlash, but because of the reputation that we have from other health professions. So then that in turn makes us want to stay in our box even more. So would you say the biggest advice is just continuing to knock on those doors, or are there other things that we can maybe do to make our voices heard?
Oh, I guess I don't think about things that are negative. I think about only things that are positive. And don't even, you need to, not dwell on anything that's negative, even something that, would come through in an evaluation, keep the 9 positive ones, throw away that negative one, unless it was really helpful. But no, you really need to have a positive mindset and believe and that you can accomplish something, for whomever you're pitching to. But yes, I would say definitely you have to think out of the box, and just, I'm sure you'll see opportunities around because they're everywhere. They really are.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's like the power of having your eyes open and again not being afraid to hear a no and just to keep going at it and things like that, because I feel like that's a big thing that's holding people back, is just being afraid of what might they say. The worst thing is no, and then you just move on to the next thing, or you keep going at it if you really believe in it and things like that, because that's why we really like having guests like you with the background that you have with so many accomplishments, because I mean, 9 times out of 10 or almost all the time, it's like I heard, this is an exaggeration, but it's like I heard a million no's before I got that yes that really solidified my career. And people focus so much on the highlights, like with
Right.
Instagram, the LinkedIn's, social medias and
Right.
stuff, where it's like you see where everyone's succeeding and you're like, oh, I've only had no's, or I haven't had those types of opportunities. Well, you don't see what's going on behind that LinkedIn post or behind that Instagram post and things like that. And so that's why I love these types of interviews, because you hear the real stuff, and just the fact of you have to embrace those no's and really keep going at it and stuff.
I would add that, find outside of the profession, find some wellness organizations and groups. There used to be one that is now defunct. I think it was the American, it was Worksite Health Promotion, that I would go to their national meetings. And I remember one of the speakers taking the word fear, which is what you're talking about, and using it as an acronym. It's stuck in my brain. They said it's false expectations appear real, right? So that's what's happening. These false expectations are holding you back from potentially having a career that you love. I mean, I would do those 1-hour presentations at a company. It would wear me out, but I got to see the rewards with people lowering their cholesterol. There was a young man at Bethlehem Steel. He was a PhD researcher. He would ask me so many questions. And one day he gets me in the parking lot, right? I'm coming out of my car and I'm like, oh my God, it's Paul. Paul, his name was Paul. It's Paul. What does he want? He knows everything I know, about nutrition. Here, he had his blood test done by his doctor, and he significantly brought down all his cholesterol numbers. And I asked him to write a letter to the human resource managers. So, yeah, okay, so you have to think quick sometimes. but that's the kind of rewards that you get, yeah, and that are possible if anything, I think sometimes wellness programs get bashed as being ineffective. People have to pay. Nobody paid for my services except there was a nominal fee sometimes for the cooking demos. But there's, you can really blaze your own course, your own trail out there in wellness still.
Yeah, no, and I'm really glad that you mentioned like there are more than just that one Paul in the world, of like the people that you impact as a dietitian. And it's really just like that vocal, you know, even though it was only one person that, brought up to you and was like, oh, I got like so many improvements. You also, with those evaluations and with seeing, the end of a program, you see all the benefit. And again, it's like that also, I'm sure, helps get you that motivation to keep going. And also even if say it wasn't the most effective run of a program, then it's like you have those evaluations to be like, okay, what can we improve for next time, or things like that. Like it's like with what you said, like, toss away the negative and focus on the positives. And I mean, I'm sure after the pandemic and stuff, it's been difficult for people to look on the bright side, but there is, especially with the future of dietetics, there really are a lot of like exciting things to look forward to. Yeah, because the last question I kind of want to focus on is really just, call to action, that type of thing, and just kind of being like, what could RD2Bs listening now kind of apply to, and you sprinkled it in a little bit throughout the recording, but just kind of like a final say or piece of advice, words of wisdom that they can take with them after listening to this podcast.
Okay. So I would hope that students would look for opportunities to do more public speaking and to all types of audiences, refine your communication skills in that way. I know a lot of people are fearful of public speaking, but there's help. There's tons of help out there, even online. But you're going to develop your own unique style, and that will be one of the best assets, no matter where you go. But another one would be that persistence factor, to just keep on trying. My daughter, I tell people who have children, when you tell your son or daughter no, do they just walk away? Heck no. They are the most persistent at getting what they want. So you need to develop that childlike mindset and just keep trying. I decided I'm pleasantly persistent, but my daughters sometimes call me a pest, but I prefer. In fact, one of them said to me, the only reason people hire you is because you're a pest. And I said, that may be. but she was just teasing me. But no, you really need to, there's a quote that is, I'm going to read it so I get it right. Obstacles are things a person sees when he takes his eyes off his goals. And that's what happens. If you get fearful, if you get afraid, you start seeing obstacles. Well, I think a lot of my mindset, I don't see the obstacles. I see the goal, and I'm reaching for the goal. You're just like an Olympic athlete who's in training. You're going to keep trying. You're going to perfect your pitch. You're going to learn how to do those things. And, maybe you need a mentor. Maybe Nutrition Entrepreneurs, DPG is a great group that offers mentorship. If you prefer more business, there's dietitians in business and communications. There are some wonderful DPGs out there that they welcome students and they will mentor you.
Yeah, and I think it's great, like with what you said about that quote, where it's the, obstacles are whenever you take your eyes off of the road. And I think it ties back into that FEAR acronym that you heard, where it's like false expectations, but it has that realistic component to it. Because once you start seeing the obstacle, that's almost like your mind trying to protect you from the fears that you have, where it's like trying to find an excuse to not go towards that thing because it's like, oh, it's like too much this, or oh, I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough money, or things like that, where really it's, if you have a goal and you have a dream.
I don't have a computer system, to do this, but I found some, you don't have to do it all. You can find someone. I did early on invest in Apple computer and PowerPoint and taught myself how to use those things. So sometimes you have to do that too. But, I didn't hesitate to hire a graphic artist or to hire other people to make it easier. Hire students.
Yeah, no, and if there's a will, there's a way. But yeah, no, thank you so much, Denice, for sharing your just super awesome background and all the positive effects you've had in the dietetics profession and that, you continue to do for the profession. And I know for a fact that those listening will get a lot of great insight into just not being afraid to say no, having that entrepreneurial spirit wherever they go, and really just making the most of that RD credential. But thank you so much.
I did. Thank you, Jen. I did want to remember to mention a colleague that I met many years ago, Deborah Ween, who is the owner of Wellness Workdays, does offer internships in worksite wellness. She's out of Boston, so look her up and I'm sure maybe you'll have her on a future web podcast.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Because we do feature those dietetic internships. But yes, so whether or not, the listeners are interested in corporate wellness, they have those resources for potential dietetic internships, but also just great mindset shifts. And again, yeah, just such a great episode. And thank you again, Denny.
Thank you.